If there's one thing that we can agree on, it's that life has a tendency to suck. The good news is that you have every ability to choose which way you look at the world. We're going to talk all about it, and we're going to talk about how the poet William Ernest Henley breaks that down for us in his poem Invictus. I'm Chad Garrett, and this is The Chad Garrett Show. So, who the crap is William Ernest Henley? Well, he's a poet, and he's a poet from the Victorian era, which is going to be your mid to late 1800s going into the 1900s. This is the early part of the industrial era, also known as the Gaslight era in Britain. This poem, Invictus, was written in 1875, and it was published in a book in 1888, and it deals with three major focuses, ideals, forces, whatever it is that you want to call them. The first one is going to be religion. It's going to be this really weird battle back and forth tug between agnosticism and Christianity. And the agnosticism actually bleeds into the second piece of this, which is science. The second force that we deal with is science, because this poem is coming on the heels of the Darwinian theory, right? Darwin and his piece on the origin of species has a lot to do with some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. It also has a lot to do with social Darwinism. And if you don't know what social Darwinism is, it's this idea that you can take Darwinian theory, the idea that species grew and developed and evolved both because they had to find certain ways to survive and that their biology changed over time to allow them to do so, as well as through mating rituals. So by choosing the best mate that you can possibly find, you are able to then change the genome, more or less. There was this idea going on in this time period that social Darwinism was possible as well, that those that were successful in society were also able to do this thing where you could breed in success based on your social class. It almost takes on this Hinduist, Indian caste system type, Asian caste system type of ideology. It reminds me a lot of this article that I read by a guy named Astral Codex 10. I completely disagree with this guy in a lot of principles, but he did a review of a book called Class that was written in 1983 by a guy named Paul Fussell, where it talks about how the American class system is actually more like a caste system. I don't believe that that's true at all, but it's a interesting principle that has existed for well over 100 years now, and that a lot of people still think exists in our societies today, especially in America, which, once again, I don't buy. But you have to recognize that it is an important piece if people are still talking about it today. And the last one, and this is the biggest one, the last focus and force that we're going to be talking about in Invictus is the mentality. The mentality of people, the mentality that you choose, the lens through which you get to view life, your individuality, your self-ownership, and your mentality as a victor. Now, Invictus has had a massive impact on the world that you may not have already known about. It was actually the name of a movie named after which the poem is, right? Okay, that's a weird way of saying that. The poem inspired the name of the movie. And the reason why is because Nelson Mandela, the leader of the apartheid movement in South Africa, memorized and talked about this poem all the time in his dealings and his goings on when he was imprisoned, especially for his beliefs and for his peaceful protests against the segregation and the racism that was happening in South Africa. So this poem has a huge impact on our society because it was something that inspired one of the greatest peaceful protesters in our history. And if you haven't seen the movie Invictus, starring Matt Damon and Morgan Freeman, you really need to. I first saw it whenever I was a freshman in high school, and then it inspired me to learn this poem by heart in my sophomore year for a theater class that I was taking. And that's where I get to bring this to you today from. I don't have any notes from as far as reciting the poem goes, because that's how much this poem means to me. And until I found The Gods of the Copybook Headings by Rudyard Kipling, this was my favorite poem of all time. And I hope that you get to see why. Before that, though, I want to talk to you about forerunnerproductions.locals.com. It's our community where you get to interact with all of the members of our team, where you get exclusive articles, exclusive content, extra pieces of interviews, all sorts of amazing things. It's where you get to be a part of the culture revolution. You're already on your way by watching this video, by engaging with me, but I want you to join the conversation. I want to hear from you. We at Forerunner Productions want to hear from you. But in order to do that, you have to go over to forerunnerproductions.locals.com. It's free to become a member and see a lot of our content. We give away our best content for free, but some of it, the exclusive stuff, is really cool. And for that, you'll need to be a supporter, and you'll need to help us down this road on reviving the soul of our society by telling the best stories that have ever been told. Hope you'll join us. Okay, I'm going to recite for you this poem, and then we're going to talk about it. I'm going to go line by line and break it down for you in just a second. I hope that you enjoy this. Thank you so much for being here. It means so much to me. Without further ado, Invictus by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. In this place of wrath and tears looms but a horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. That's it. If you can't tell by now, this thing just bleeds with this idea of the world sucks. Life kind of sucks. But it also is beautiful, and it's full of experiences, and life is worth living. I don't believe that we would have been given this life to live if it wasn't worth living, if there wasn't worth it, it wasn't something worth experiencing throughout all of this. And if there's one point that I think that this poem drives home more than any other, is that your perspective on life will dictate what you get out of it. Think of your eyes like camera lenses. There are different filters that you can put on cameras. There are different filters that we have on this camera right now, and the different lightings and the way that you see all of this. If you're technically inclined enough to know what Snapchat is, I know that some of our older audiences don't really care about Snapchat. That's fine. But for those of you that know what Snapchat is, you can throw a filter on Snapchat, and you can make something that is ugly look beautiful, and you can make something that is beautiful look like it is burning to the ground. All because of the filter or the lens that you choose to see the world through. Your eyes are the same way, and your filter is your mentality. You can make something beautiful, or you can make it look awful like it is burning down. And there is one group of people that have mastered this better than any other, and that is the media. Think about your news cycle. Think about your social media posts. The way that you view the world, if that is the way that you get your news, is directly impacted by the lens through which you are fed this information. And you can take something that is terrible and manipulate it and show it to be something that is great. Or you can take something that is amazing and have people scared to death that their lives are going to end tomorrow because of it. The best example that I have for this is what the mass media did with Donald Trump. In 2019, we had the greatest economy that we have had in years, in decades. And yet, you had people in 2020, even before the pandemic hit, believing that if Donald Trump got reelected, that their lives were over. I have a hard time believing that that was due to something that his administration did. Whenever people were making more money and there was more opportunity and unemployment was an all-time low. And yet it was the lens through which we were fed information that made so many people freak out. And now we're amazingly about to get out of this pandemic, and we're about to see an economic boom because the world is about to open back up. But there are policies that are being pushed, like how there are 30% more children in those cages that Donald Trump was villainized for under the Biden administration than there ever was for Trump. But you don't hear about that. All you hear about is the amazing things that are coming out of this administration. I'm not here to tell you that one administration is inevitably better than the other. I am using this to highlight the lens through which we see the world and the mastery that the media has played with this. And I need you to understand that you have that control over your life by where you choose to get your media. Don't stick yourself in the echo chamber. Learn all the perspectives and make your own choice. And whenever you are feeling down about life or life hits you with a hardship, make sure that you view that hardship as an opportunity to grow and overcome and not be a victim. And we're going to talk about all of these different perspectives and how they're captured in this really, honestly, short poem. But you need to have that mentality going into this if you're going to get everything out of it that you need to. You decide. So let's go line by line, and I'm going to highlight certain aspects of this thing, and we're going to have a good time with this. The first line, out of the night that covers me. This has two main pieces to it. First of all, the night, the darkness. This is the world, and it's covering you. This feeling of oppression, even suffocation, this claustrophobia that you can't escape it. Black as the pit from pole to pole. Now, the pit here is actually referencing hell. This is our first Christian reference in the poem. And it's a really weak allusion because not too many people view hell as a pit. The pit is also your mentality, the way that you view the world. And from pole to pole, once again, this is like North Pole to South Pole. It is this all-encompassing blackness. Out of the night, the black pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Now, this is where we get our first look at agnosticism. So it says gods, not God. And it's obvious that Henley is playing with this idea of he knows that there's something out there. He knows that there's something greater, bigger, that the world was created to some design, but he doesn't have the faith that it was one being or that he can particularly worship any of the beings that might have created it. And I think that this has a direct allusion back to Darwinism, this idea that people, Homo sapiens, evolved into what they are through breeding and through the manipulation of genomes to adapt for survival purposes. And the fact that people in that point in society wanted to try and harness this ideal in order to establish a ruling class, the higher class, I think goes against all things that make the world free. Everyone should be given the opportunity to achieve success based on their merits, based on how hard they are willing to work and strive and do. Not based on race, not based on religion, not based on sex or sexual orientation. How creative are you? How successful are you at getting the job done? What are your merits? And you can't breed that. That is something that is nurtured in people. That is not genetic. It's a mindset. The unconquerable soul is that mindset. The idea that you're not a victim, you're a conqueror. That whatever challenge lay in front of you, that you will be able to defeat it. It doesn't matter how black the pit is from pole to pole. It cannot encompass the brightness, the illumination, the good of the human soul. Which is why Henley gives thanks to whatever gods may be, because it is from the gods, it is from God that we get our soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance. So the fell clutch, once again, in capturing that depressing, inescapable grip that life can hold on you. And circumstance being the realities of life, the things that we get hit with all the time. I have not winced nor cried aloud. Once again, getting out of this victim mentality, this idea that you are oppressed and that you cannot achieve anything and that the world is against you. Yeah, the world's against you. Overcome it. Do better. Don't sink into that line of thinking. I love this next one. Under the bludgeonings of chance, right? Imagine just getting pummeled. If you ever watched a violent TV show or an MMA fight and someone is just getting bludgeoned over the head, you know how graphic that is, how intense it can be, and how chance of all things, the random things that come out of left field in our lives, that those are the things that can hit us hardest. My head is bloody, but unbowed. Everyone takes hits in life. Every person is going to take a hit in life at some time. And you're not going to come out the same. But whether you come out stronger or whether you feel like you want to recede in and just try and turtle up and hope that you never get hit again, it's a mentality thing. Don't be the victim, be the victor. Don't be the conquered, be the conqueror. In this place of wrath and tears, this encaptures this idea that we are very familiar with, that the world is full of hate and anger and pain. Looms but a horror of the shade. Death is the shade, and it looms over us all. It could come at any time, but the horror is this demonic presence, this fear that enraptures us and captures us at all times. It's the shadow version of death that it often can be even scarier than death itself. It tries to manipulate that darkness, tries to squash your light. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. The menace being that fear. And how fear cannot rule over us if we don't let it. You have to keep living. It matters not how straight the gate. Once again, this is another allusion to Christianity. It's a great allusion to Christianity. It's a defiant allusion to Christianity. Matters not. This is a defiance against life's burdens. This is a defiance against those coincidence challenges, the things that might put you on your rear, that you have to stand back up again, the failures that hit you over and over and over again as you live life, because that is part of life. That straight gate is a Christian allusion to the ability to get into heaven scot-free without sin. And there was only one person that ever lived without sin. And when you build it into the next piece, how charged with punishment this scroll, it has that other allusion to sin. So we're talking about, it doesn't matter how many sins are on the book that God holds when we get there. It doesn't matter how hard life hits us, how many challenges are thrown at us, what the burdens are that we have to carry. It doesn't matter what the consequences are in the long run, because free will has given us a choice. You get into the last two lines. I'll say the whole last stanza for you again. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. For many, many years, I used to think that this was contradictory to Christianity, and I battled with it because this poem has helped me get through some of the toughest times of my life. It's not a contradiction. And here's why. It says, I am the master. It does not say, I am the author of my fate. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. You get to choose free will. You have the choice to make the mentality. You have the choice to figure out where your life is going, to take the opportunities that are given to you, or to avoid bad ones when they come around. I am the captain of my soul. God is the author. He writes all the paths. He knows all the outcomes, but he gives us the choice to choose, because without choice, there can be no love. And if there is one thing that encompasses God more than anything else, if there is one experience that we are put on this earth to understand more than any other, it is love. It is to experience the good that is love. Eros and agape and philia and the other three Greek types of love that are so much better at describing love than the English word. We're put here to experience these things, to experience what God has given us an opportunity to, and we get the choice to either be the victim or the victor. And at the end of the day, your life is in your hands alone. What you do with it is up to you. You were given your circumstances for a specific reason. How you choose to use those, how you choose to overcome your challenges, that's up to you. And no one can take that away from you except you. Don't waste your opportunity. You only get one life. Live it. Be the captain of your soul. I'm Chad Garrett, and this is The Chad Garrett Show.